A new poll in the closely watched race for governor in New Jersey shows a dead heat. The poll from Emerson College Polling, PIX11 and The Hill shows Democrat Mikie Sherrill and Republican Jack Ciattarelli, both with 43% of support and 11% of voters undecided. Joining me to discuss, Jeffrey Skelly, Chief Elections Analyst at Decision Desk HQ. Jeffrey, this poll seems to be a little bit of an outlier. Most polls have been showing Sherrill with a pretty comfortable lead. Real Clear Politics average of polls has Sherrill plus 9. Do you think something is changing in this race?
Well, anytime you get an outlier poll, you have to consider the possibility that something has changed or that it is an outlier. So I think this is a situation where it'd be good to see another pollster who is not aligned with either of the campaigns to come out with another poll and see if perhaps this race is trending toward Ciattarelli. I think it is worth noting that this poll does echo some findings from internal polls that Ciattarelli has released, which showed it, the race very close between him and Sherrill. But I think it would be good to have another pollster who's not aligned with his campaign to show something similar.
In the poll, what demographics do we see moving toward the Republican Ciattarelli compared to, say, 2024 when Kamala Harris won New Jersey by 6 points?
Right. So it seems from the poll that you have sort of a situation where there isn't a huge amount of movement from what we saw in the 2024 election. And what really I think matters to a great extent here is the group of voters who say they're undecided. Because if you sort of look at the crosstabs, a notable group that had a large share of undecided voters were Black voters, which are typically a Democratic-leaning constituency, especially in New Jersey, heavily Democratic. But Mikie Sherrill didn't perform very well in areas with large numbers of Black voters in the Democratic primary. And you have something like 20% of the respondents here saying they're undecided. And so it does raise questions about potentially a turnout issue for Sherrill among a group of voters that she would be favored among. And at the same time, for Ciattarelli, he seems to be doing well among white voters, among voters who are worried about the economy. And at the end of the day, that's the thing that I think cost of living and the economy are the things that people are most worried about. And those may play more to Ciattarelli's strength based on how he is campaigning.
The poll shows younger voters breaking decisively for Sherrill by more than 30 points. Ciattarelli has a sizable lead, about 16 points among older voters. Is that surprising to you? I know we've heard a lot lately about the gains Republicans have been making with younger voters.
What's interesting here to me is that in an off-year election, so not a presidential or even a federal midterm election, you do wonder about the young voters who are paying the most attention. Young voters are less likely to show up in really any election, but particularly one that is not a presidential race. And so I wonder if this is a situation where voters who are a bit more highly engaged tend to be a bit more Democratic leaning. And so maybe young voters who are more highly engaged are more Democratic leaning and maybe paying attention to this race, whereas some of the lower propensity voters who showed up in the 2024 election and were more likely to vote for Trump by comparison aren't as engaged in this race. And so that's another challenge for the Ciattarelli campaign and the GOP is turning out some of those voters who made New Jersey actually somewhat close in 2024.
What are the issues that voters are most concerned about? I've seen a lot of the ads that are airing in that race, and it seems like the cost of electricity is a very important issue there. Is that a main focus of voters in this race? I know you mentioned the economy as well.
Yes, the poll found that about half of the electorate's top concern was the economy. And so I think that speaks to concerns about things like the cost of living, cost of housing, cost of everything. And the poll also did ask about sort of who was to blame the most in the voters' eyes when it comes to the rising costs of utilities. And perhaps not surprising, there was a bit of a partisan split. Republicans were more likely to blame Governor Phil Murphy, and Democrats were more likely to blame the utility companies, and independents were sort of split there. But I think just the overall concerns about the cost of living, the fact that Democrats have been in power now in New Jersey for 8 years, and even though President Trump is in the White House, and that would suggest maybe Democrats get a little boost because they're not the party in the White House right now. And in an election, when it's not a presidential election, that tends to help the party not in the White House. You do wonder if 8 years of Phil Murphy and the fact that Ciattarelli did come very close in 2021 has made, given him a real shot in this race.
What are the opinions in New Jersey of President Trump, and how do voters want their next governor to approach the Trump administration?
Right. So the approval rating in this poll for Donald Trump was about 41%, and in the low 50s in terms of disapproval. And so not too different from what we see nationally for him. And overall, the electorate was about split in terms of how they would like the next governor to work or stand up to the Trump administration. It was split about 50-50 but between those who wanted the next governor to stand up to Trump and those who wanted to more closely work with Trump. So not a huge change from the other polling we've seen in New Jersey on that question. But nonetheless, I think it does speak to an electorate that could be open to a Republican governor, even though Trump is in office, and even though the state preferred Kamala Harris by about 6 percentage points in 2024. And so to me, that speaks again to why this race could be close in the end.
Be an interesting race to continue to follow. Could give us a good indication of where we're heading for next year's midterm elections. But for now, let's leave it at that. Jeffrey Skelly with DDHQ. Thanks so much for your time.